Germanic tribesmen left the forests and marshes of northern Europe in search of warmer climate and better grazing land for their cattle. Although the Romans fought for many years to keep them out of the empire, they gradually moved into the Danube River Valley. The Germanic tribes lived in villages called hamlets. The villages were surrounded by farmland and pastures. Their homes were long thatched-roofed huts. The family lived in one end, and their animals lived in the other, in stalls. The body heat of the animals helped warm the hut. Wooden tables and benches were the only furniture, although rich villagers added wall hangings and carpets to their huts. The Germanic tribesmen are described as men of giant stature, with fair skin, blue eyes, and long blonde hair. Many of them were lean and even gaunt, with skin pulled taut over the muscles and bone from meager meals. The Roman historian Tacitus praises them for their bravery in war, for the bold and hardy life to which their sons were bred, for the deep respect they paid to their women, and for their faithful conduct and their kindness to strangers. The Germans made their living herding cattle. The soil in their homelands was hard clay, yet it could support barley, rye, wheat, beans, and peas. Most of the farm work was done by women, children, and slaves. Women also cooked, spun wool, and wove cloth on upright looms. Other occupations in the Germanic society included milling, baking, carpentry, farming, trapping, hunting. They also vinted wine, brewed ale and mead, a beverage which combined honey and ale, and practiced the lapidary skills of jewelry making. The Germans traded cattle for Roman glass vessels, table articles, and jewelry. Women in Germanic villages wore long skirts made of different yarns. Their common outfit was a one-piece sack-like dress that went from the shoulders to the feet. They sometimes wore scarves or shawls fastened with a bone or metal pin called a brooch. Men wore short woolen tunics and close-fitting pants. The tunic was covered with a cloak. The cloak was fastened on the right shoulder with a brooch. Tribesmen living in the wilderness or rural areas sometimes wore little or no clothing. In their free time, they enjoyed feasting, drinking, and dancing. Men enjoyed gambling with dice, and they boxed and wrestled. In the winter, they skated on ice, using skates made of flat bone. German warriors spent their time fighting, hunting, or making weapons. A boy received a shield and a spear when he reached adulthood. German tribes were clan-based, with blood loyalty the basis for all bands. The clans were groups of related families. A chieftain led all the clans. He was usually the best warrior of the clan. Chieftains were elected by the warriors. These chieftains gave their men leadership, weapons, and a chance for wealth. They gave the warriors food and shelter. In return, warriors gave complete loyalty and credit for all successes to their leader. Warriors fought in small groups called bands. Each man fought on his own. Bands made surprise raids on their enemies. They would charge wildly, yelling to frighten the enemy. Attacks provided slaves, cattle, and other treasures for the tribe. Their weapons were daggers, short swords, or heavy metal or stone axes. They used light wooden shields and wore suits of leather armor. In the Germanic religion, Woden was the chief god. He was the god of war, poetry, learning, and magic. Thor was Woden's son, and also god of war and the god of thunder. The spirits carried warriors who lost their lives in battle into the afterlife. The warriors would feast and fight forever in the hall of Woden, called Valhalla. The Germans also believed that law came from the people. German rulers could not change a law unless the people agreed. To show approval, warriors would bang their weapons against their shields. Their laws were not written down. They were memorized and passed down from parent to child. The laws were created to prevent blood feuds. Blood feuds required that families of the original fighters seek revenge. Members accused of breaking the law could seek justice by providing oath helpers to the tribal assemblies. These were people who swore that the accused was telling the truth. They believed that liars would be punished by the gods. Another method of judgment to determine a person's innocence or guilt was known as the ordeal, or severe test. This method involved having the accused do something dangerous or even life-threatening. If the accused survived the ordeal, he or she is usually proclaimed innocent. If guilty, the individual would perish. Fire and water were used as mediums for ordeals. Some involved walking barefoot over red-hot coals or putting one's arm in boiling water. If the burns did not heal in 3 days, the person was guilty. Another was being tied up and thrown into a lake or a river. If the person sank, they were innocent. If they floated, they were guilty. Punishments were not always physical, however. Courts could impose a fine called a wergeld. The amount paid varied with the severity of the crime. All people were not treated fairly. A person's wealth and importance determined the penalty.